On August 21st, 2023, I joined composer Wendelin Bartley and ecologist Leo Cabrera on a visit to the Rouge National Urban Park, which is centered around the Rouge River and its tributaries in the Greater Toronto Area. We were there to listen to soundscapes, such as the one you're hearing now, a train passing by. At the end of our listening session, Leo asked me to explain how I create soundscape compositions. So this episode explores that question, accompanied by soundscapes. So what is soundscape composition? Soundscape composition is a form of electroacoustic music, characterized by the presence of recognizable environmental sounds and contexts.
Rouge National Park, August 21st.
And context is important here. For example, what do you hear now? I heard a swan, birds, voices, echoing under a bridge. A bike just went by. There's rumble of the city in the background and a baby crying. There's some young people arriving and I hear somebody dragging their feet a bit and making a lovely little sound. Of course, I heard trains, and now we're in another space. What about this place? What's the story here? And what would happen if I changed the story by cutting low frequencies from the swan and these waves? And what if I made the train a bit more distant and put it to the left? And what if I placed the mom talking to her son about fishies in reverberation on the right? And how would you feel if there was no sound at all? You see, to me, soundscape composition, and art in general for that matter, is a game of illusion. Artists are constantly playing with our senses of perception and our understanding and interpretation of reality. So what I'm doing is inviting you to listen to reality, or at least what my microphones captured on a given day. But it's also listening to fantasy, which are my manipulations of those sounds. And it's an interesting liminal zone, but it's also a very privileged space, because not everyone can afford to create or listen to soundscape compositions. I'm thinking in particular about living beings, human and non-human, who cannot lower the volume of, say, a rumbling train passing by their home every few minutes, like this one I recorded. Also, what about sounds that have disappeared from our acoustic environment? How can we remember and mourn sounds that have become extinct? What efforts can we make to bring some of them back? How can soundscape composition help with that? Now, as I told Leo, my approach to soundscape composition is to ask a lot of questions about the ethics of field recording, about positionality, about the added value of an artistic expression in any given acoustic space. I also ask myself, to whom am I accountable in my work when I record? And how can one create sound art that does not perpetuate cycles of extraction and exploitation that are quite literally killing us? So, many questions. What do you think? I'll end this episode with an excerpt from a conversation I had during the summer of 1990 with the late composer R. Murray Schafer, who was author of the Tuning of the World book and leader of the World Soundscape project at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver in the 1970s. Murray and I were talking about microphones and listening.
If the microphone replaces your ear, there's something wrong. And as you see in an awful lot of our listening, that the microphone has replaced the ear. The mere fact that, for instance, we demand presence on all recorded sounds, and they're all close mic'd, is a recognition of the fact that the microphone, which is an instrument for getting close-ups, is respected more than our own sort of hearing experience. The fact that we can no longer listen at a distance. Now, if you're going to get involved really with ecology and the environment, you're going to have to rediscover how to listen at a distance, because an awful lot of the sounds you're talking about are distant.
And I agree with Murray that we need to question our use of technology, for sure, but also learn to listen at a distance, with or without microphones. Listen at a distance.